All right, so I wanted to continue on the topic on decoration really quick before I pass it over to Sheikh who's here. Okay, so in my day job, I'm a learning experience designer. Okay, if you know, you know. If you don't, don't. Okay. So there's like a lot of designing going on, and my whole thing is originality. And of course, you can't always be original in every single thing, but I'll tell you what's not original. When I saw, I'm not going to dignify them by mentioning their company name, but I saw like on Etsy or something, it's like, there's like, ooh, Ramadan trees. Are you serious? Have you not created Ramadan trees? Get out of here. It's so it's like that. It's literally the epitome and the incarnation of ugliness. Okay? It's literally a crescent-shaped tree, and they're like, we're gonna put ornaments on it. We're going to put Eid presents under it, and. Like, I'm not even going to begin talking about like the theological aspects of it, of how this is a copycat of obviously Christmas, which in and of itself is another copycat of pagan Yule log tradition. But it's like, why are we having a crescent-shaped, ugly one, Ramadan tree? Like, you might as well as just go do tarawih in the church. You might as well just go pray tarawih in the church. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because, again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you the keys for preparation, right? And when a person is completely missing the importance of how to prepare for Ramadan, and they're so free, and you could almost say like, are you bored? That's the first thing that comes to my mind. You will end up getting this kind of unoriginal Ramadan truth, right? And if you're gonna put something up, be unique, be interesting, be something that's not rooted in another religion, that's rooted in paganism, right? So that's just my spiel on the ugly tree.
So we wanted to kind of, I'm gonna give a little outline as to what the rest of the talk is going to be like. We broke it down into planning and prepping. So the first part of that was the Shaykh talking about the ugly Ramadan trees, and then there's routines we should develop for Ramadan, during Ramadan. And then, of course, taking full advantage of it. As I mentioned, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, for us to obtain taqwa, we have to do Ramadan right. We can't just, fast kind of however we choose to do it. And then we want to go into some common mistakes. That might be the fifth of all of this, inshallah. I'm sure many people will have questions about, fasting and whatnot. And then some random miscellaneous topics. So going back to planning and prepping, right? These are things obviously we should be doing outside of Ramadan. So don't do the tree.
The ugly tree.
You will get the stamp of disapproval from Sheikh Chao. But plan out stuff for your families. If may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for everyone, but if you're by yourself, then find a group in which you can push each other to do things. Usually parents will push their kids to try and fast. You can do like little half fasts where you don't eat in between meals. Right? We don't consider this fasting. It's not like you can be like, yeah, you're gonna do like a nisf siyam. It doesn't really work that way. But just to encourage them to partake and to get them slowly acclimated. But as Shaykh had mentioned, you don't have to fast until you're, mukallaf or baligh. You're not, it's not like prayer where you encourage them at 7, then you tell them at 10, and if they don't, then, you gotta give them a little bit of encouragement in other ways. But it's not like that. You fast when you are now held accountable for your actions as a Muslim, basically a Muslim adult, right? So once you're baligh, you have to, or you reach puberty, you have to fast. But before that, you can get your kids into the spirit. So families will try and do these things, and they'll try to plan programs to where, maybe every day after Maghrib, we'll read some Quran, or after Fajr, we'll read some Quran. These things are very crucial to building that Ramadan spirit, but as we mentioned, it really does take those physical acts of doing it. You're not just going to think that, I'm feeling a little good today, let me sit down and read some Quran. No, we have to remember throughout Ramadan, right, the equation is that it is our physical acts, what we are doing, fasting, standing in prayer, reading and reciting Quran, giving more charity, making more dua. These physical acts are going to lead or equal to us increasing in our spirituality, our iman, our taqwa. Now, one thing we mentioned, we had discussed, is that it's really hard, especially on the people in the house who are doing the cooking and cleaning. And let's be honest, it's usually the women, especially from immigrant households, right? Like our mothers, they'll be cooking. I grew up seeing my mom and my aunts and everyone just cooking and cleaning all day during Ramadan, right? And when you grow up seeing it, it seems normal. You don't think anything of it, but really, it's not that easy. So we should try to make it easy on them. Try to pick up some of the housework. Try to, overall as a family during Ramadan, one issue that happens with people is that they gain weight during Ramadan, right? Because we just end up eating a lot more than we should be. And we should technically be in a calorie deficit. Where we should be in that cutting phase, not the bulking phase. Ramadan's not for bulking. Okay? So if you choose to bulk during Ramadan, then more power to you. But we're fasting, and we're already not eating throughout the day. And just as Muslims, trying to obtain our best Islam and trying to be the best mu'min, we do so by following the example of the Prophet ﷺ. And one thing that I will continue to repeat over and over again, so you may have heard this before. We've all heard the famous hadith that 1/3 of our stomach should be for water, 1/3 should be for food, 1/3 should be for air. Do y'all know the beginning of the hadith? That's actually the end of the hadith. It's not the beginning of the hadith. The beginning of the hadith is that you should just eat a few morsels to keep your back straight. That's actually the sunnah. The sunnah is to eat for fuel, not for fun. Right? The Prophet ﷺ did eat for fun, but he would limit himself. The Prophet ﷺ loved eating dates, and he loved honey, and he loved yaqeen, which is a type of squash or pumpkin. He loved eating shoulder of lamb. He had foods that he liked, but he would just eat enough to keep his back straight, just to get by until you feel hungry again. Then you take a couple of bites, not pig out. Where subhanAllah, I don't know how true this is, but I believed it when I heard it. There's actually a lot of people on the first day of Ramadan, the first iftar, that end up in the hospital because they overate. Right? I heard this happen in Saudi, and I believed it. Because when they are ready for iftar, they have these huge, suhoon, these dishes of just rice, and they'll cook an entire camel and just plop it on the rice, and camel's amazing, it's really good. But they eat so much that they end up in the hospital, right? Whereas the Prophet, we think the Sunnah is the 1/3, pie chart. That's not the Sunnah. The Prophet said, if you're going to take more than this, just a few morsels to keep your back straight, then you do 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So that's the upper limit. That's if we want more, right? So we need to try and control our appetites a bit, eat less, and less cooking in the home. That's less stress on the cooks of the house, right? The mothers and there's some men out there that cook and are good cooks. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all for feeding your families. You start this by training your body to eat less even before Ramadan starts. And this is something very important that is lost on a lot of people. We hear all the time that the Prophet ﷺ, he used to fast mostly all of Sha'ban, right? He would have fasted all of it, except he didn't want to complete an entire month, because only the month of Ramadan is the month in which we fast its entirety. So he would, when Aisha radiallahu anha, when she narrated this hadith saying that he fasted all of Sha'ban, she meant he fasted most, right? And some of the scholars said that you would fast all except one day, because also you're not supposed to fast the day before Ramadan. So the Prophet ﷺ would constantly be training himself as well. He would probably fast 29 or 28 days per month if it weren't for his other, his other responsibilities. Some of the scholars have mentioned this. So the Prophet ﷺ would always be training himself to prepare for Ramadan. And even when it comes to training yourself in other ways, like praying qiyam, right? We can all hopefully afford to sacrifice at least one night in which we wake up. And it's not, nobody's even saying that you need to wake up exactly 1/3, last third of the night and spend that entire third. No, you can start off by waking up 10 minutes before Fajr Adhan. Make wudu. Pray 2 rak'ahs. Right? And this is advice to myself too, because I'm not a morning person. The only way, or my number one guarantee that works for me in being able to pray qiyam and fajr is to just not sleep at night. But that's not really, it's not something that everybody should be doing, and we need our night sleep. But it's not supposed to be easy. That's the whole point. These acts have so much reward and have such a high status in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows it's difficult on us. He knows it's difficult on us, and for us to still do it, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brags to the angels for the one who gets up in the middle of the night and prays, because everybody else is sleeping. Everybody else is asleep, and they're in the comfort of their beds, and we're up standing, and maybe our knees hurt, maybe our feet are swelling, maybe our back hurts, right? Everything that happens to you once you turn 30 for some reason, right? All of the ailments just start kicking in, and your mind starts wandering. But we do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can wake up 5 to 10 minutes before Fajr. I wouldn't say 5, maybe 10. You make wudu and you pray 2 rak'ahs and you pray your witr. And then it'll be Fajr time. You can just pray Fajr and go on with your day. And then you can start building more and more, right? So then you're praying Taraweeh, and now, you're used to it, and you're just adding more now. And then when the last 10 nights come, and we'll go into this, but that's when people go into overdrive, which they should be. They should be doing that. A big one, which I'll just go over quickly, because there's no need to expound. Manage your invitations, right? Everybody wants to have an iftar party. Everybody wants to have a suhoor party. Everybody, wants to socialize and gather around. And then you'll have like these grand suhoors or iftars that are being sponsored. And it's fine, you go, but you can't make socializing such a huge part of your Ramadan, right? If you're going to socialize, meet at the masjid, right? Meet for salah, come together to, read some Quran together. The fact that Ramadan comes and goes, and we don't know when our next Ramadan is going to be, definitely the people around the world who were being killed and slaughtered, they didn't think that they wouldn't reach this Ramadan, which is why there's a specific dua for us to reach Ramadan. We say, Allahumma balighna Ramadan. There's no dua for any other month. Not even for Hajj. There's no Allahumma balighna bil Hijjah, right? There's no dua for that. It's for Ramadan. Meaning that if we go through this month and we don't get its benefit, right? Shaykh already mentioned that you're going to actually have consequences. Right? There's a famous hadith that talks about Ramadan when the gates of heaven are open and the gates of Jahannam are closed, and the shayateen are chained around their necks, and there's a night in this month that's better than 1,000 nights. And if you are deprived of the goodness of this night, then the hadith just says you're deprived. Like, period. You're deprived. That sounds extra serious, right? It's kind of like when your parents threaten you with just one word, and you're waiting for them to finish. They just use that one word, and you're like, okay, it's serious. If you're deprived of the goodness of that night, then you're just deprived. Right? So we have to make sure that we try to, we enjoy ourselves and we enjoy the company of our fellow Muslim brothers and sisters. But we don't lose focus, right? We don't lose sight of what Ramadan really should be. It is a time for family. It is a time for coming together. But our main purpose is fasting and praying and seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We mentioned routines. There's different routines. Should I say anything about routines? Okay, so number one is to have a daily wird. Okay, wird. Does anybody know what wird means?
Like a routine.
It means it's like a routine, right? But when we say wird, it usually applies to adhkar and Quran, right? And the scholars, they say, man laysa lahu wirdun fahuwa qirdun. Man laysa lahu wirdun fahuwa qirdun. Y'all know what that means, non-Arabs? Whoever doesn't have a wird is a monkey. Right? What you're just going about your day, not caring about anything, tossing some poo around, eating bananas. You have to have a daily routine to keep you grounded in your connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we should already have a wird of adhkar. After every salah, we should be doing adhkar. The tough one is having a wird of Quran, having a routine of reciting the Quran. Whether it's picking one ayah and then you do tadabbur of it, you ponder over it, you learn its meaning, you learn its implications and applications. Or if you just want to read the whole page, or if you're hafiz, you should be reviewing every single day.
Yep.
Okay. So we have to have a wird of Quran, no matter how small it is, or if you start off small and you slowly build. This is something that we have to have. Right? If you lose out on the opportunity of making the Quran your companion, you're losing out on so many blessings. There's so many ahadith that talk about the Quran, the benefits of those who take the Quran as a companion. Right? It comes as a intercessor on your behalf. Right? It comes and argues on your behalf with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And no, this person took me as their companion and they do not deserve to be punished or be sent to the hellfire. We put caffeine, right? If you're addicted to caffeine, or if you love coffee like I do, I don't even think it's about the caffeine, I just love the taste of coffee. So I heard that's a trait of a psychopath or sociopath, I don't know. You need to also work on that as well. Work on kind of weaning yourself off, or a lot of people buy those delayed release or slow release caffeine pills that they say it works for them. If it works for you, then go for it. More power to you. Routines of Taraweeh, right? Nobody's saying you have to pray 20, or you have to pray 36, or you have to pray 11. If you make it to the masjid and you pray 2, just make sure you try and be consistent, but do try and push yourself a little bit every single night. Find other avenues to get more reward. Of course, dua and sadaqah and helping others and being dutiful to your parents and being, helping out the needy and the poor and the orphan and being good to your spouses and being merciful to children. All of these things are always available to us throughout the year, but we have to give that extra push and effort in doing it. And most importantly, you have to balance it all out. Do not burn yourself out. Right? We want to make sure that, Shaykh mentioned it's a marathon, right? That's like the number one analogy we get for Ramadan every single year. It's a marathon. You have to pace yourself and you have to make sure that you're good to go for the last leg. Right? You cannot, if somebody hands you the last 10 days baton and you trip and fall on your face, then you're missing out. You're missing out on all of the rewards and blessings and avenues of forgiveness. That basically goes into taking full advantage, right? When you want to take full advantage, you do so because you're seeking Allah's forgiveness. You have the three ahadith that the Shaykh quoted: Man sama Ramadan, man qama Ramadan, man qama Laylatul Qadr. So you fast, you stand in prayer, you stand the night of Laylatul Qadr. Now, I want to just focus real quick on Laylatul Qadr itself, right? We talked about giving charity, and we'll talk about one other thing aside from that. But when it comes to the last 10 nights, a mistake that a lot of people make, and maybe a lot of you don't do this or have never seen this, but it happens, and maybe some of you have seen it. Maybe your families fall into this, and you need to be the one that guides them, and they'll tell you that you're being too serious. But last 10 nights, Laylatul Qadr is not guaranteed to be on the 27th night. Most narrations do indicate that most likely it can fall on the 27th night. Okay, so there's a difference here. If most narrations indicate that it could possibly fall on the 27th night, does that mean we only try to catch the 27th night every year? But then what happens? Every year you come the 27th night, the masjid's full. The last 10 nights, you may get like one saf or two saf. Right? 27th night, the masjid's full. Why? Right? We have to take advantage of all of the 10 nights. All of the 10 nights. For a couple of reasons. Literally 2 reasons. Number one, Laylatul Qadr can fall on any of the odd nights. Number 2, let's say we didn't start Ramadan on the right day. So then, maybe, just maybe, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept, the odd nights, the nights that we think are odd might actually be even and vice versa. So, and plus, why not? Why not just push yourself those last 10 nights? Ramadan is going away. You don't have much time left. You don't know if you're going to reach the next Ramadan. Take full advantage, right? Every single one of the last 10 nights, we have to push ourselves, right? And you want to push yourself to do the most. So even though you can just pray at home, every single masjid in Houston should be, at least as far as I know, will be open for Qiyam last 10 nights. Some only do the odd nights, but I'm sure here they'll be open last 10 nights. Over at Al Farouk we're open last 10 nights. You just go and pray. Even if you just catch 2 rak'ahs, or if you just come at the end and you pray the last 2 and you pray with her, just try and catch it, because you do not want to be from those that Allah or the Prophet ﷺ said is deprived. Right? Can you imagine that you fall into that category just because you chose your comfort and your sleep over the goodness of Laylatul Qadr? And then, of course, one thing that is really important in order for us to take full advantage of Ramadan, we have to watch our character. We have to make sure that we control our anger. We have to make sure that we display good character. We have good adab. We say good things. We do good things. Because there's a hadith that goes, فَلَيْسَ لِلَّهِ حَاجَةٌ فَلَيْسَ لِلَّهِ حَاجَةٌ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not in need of what? He's not in need of us depriving ourselves of food and drink if we're just going to say whatever and do whatever. We're going to say bad things or talk about useless things. We're going to do bad things, or going to see bad things, or listen to bad things. right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has no need for us to starve ourselves. So part of fasting is to also, they call it the fasting of the hands and the eyes and the ears and the tongue. Right? Just engage in good. And then you have to focus on obligatory acts as well. What's the point of fasting if you're not praying 5 daily prayers? Right? Honestly, on the hierarchy, this is a question, but everybody should know the answer. What's more important? Praying 5 daily prayers or fasting? Praying, right? It's the first pillar after the Shahada. It's what is the difference between belief and disbelief, right? If you reject Salah, then reject is the key word here, not if you're lazy with your prayers. But it should push us, right? Like I said, what's the point of starving ourselves if we're not praying our 5 daily prayers? Want to go into conversations?
No.
So,
I want to make a quick comment on this idea of balancing trying to, I would say, keep yourself balanced, know your limits. For example, I know some families, for example, it's their tradition to go Tarawih hop. Do you guys know what Tarawih hopping is? Tarawih hopping is this idea of, I'm going to go to this masjid on one day for Tarawih and then we'll go to another masjid. I don't know, like when you are spending all this time driving around and your focus is, I'm just going to go listen to because that Shaykh reads Quran so nice and I'm just going to drive 45 minutes the other way. When those 45 minutes could have been done, imagine if you had stayed in the masjid after Ramadan, you had helped clean up instead of being just a consumer eating them, stuffing yourself, right? You could have just done something better instead of just running around Houston, driving around to catch a different tarawih at a different masjid, right? This is not an issue. I'm not making this an issue of you shouldn't or it's not allowed. No, but it's, again, you are creating extra work for yourself when the work is already cut out for you. If you are starting Ramadan, the key hadith in some narrations is a hadith that's marfu', attributed to the Prophet, and that is, فَإِنَّ الْمُبَتَّ, the one who overexerts themselves, لَا أَرْضًا قَطَعًا. So imagine, the Prophet is saying, if you had a rider, someone who has a horse, and they were to hit this horse and they were to keep riding this horse, and they tired this horse out till full exhaustion, until this horse cannot move anymore. The Prophet says, فَإِنَّ الْمُبَتَّ لَا أَرْضًا قَطَعًا وَلَا ظَهْرًا أَبْقَى. When you burn yourself out, this rider, this horseback rider, not able to continue because they just went full force in the beginning and they didn't pace themselves, what happens? They will not have covered any distance, and they will have they will have no animal, there's no ride for them anymore. In this case here, of course this is a general hadith, not specific to Ramadan, your body is the vehicle throughout Ramadan, right? So this idea of, you go and people are like, yeah, let's be shayishing it up at night. And for those of you who don't, if you're not Arabic, okay, shayishing is literally, like the caterpillar from Alice in Wonderland, smoking that, whatever that watermelon flavor. Okay? Yeah, you know exactly what it is. Okay? And it's like people are like, well, it's like makruh, it's not really haram. And then it's makruh. What outdated opinion are you following? Science has proven beyond all doubt that shisha is like 10 times worse than a cigarette. And all the ulama are in agreement that cigarette is something that's not halal. Okay? And the thing is, it's like they go iftar, like mashallah, yuftiruna bil akl wa bil ma'siyah. They break their fast with food and with sin. It's like, oh, they gotta get their cigarette in. It's like, do they follow the cigarette? It's like, think about this, right? And it's like, after the Tarawih, they go there like, they're not even doing Tarawih. They're like, wow, this, والله في مسلسلات حلوة في رمضان على التلفزيون. They're like, there's all these really nice television shows in Ramadan. Wallah khasara, it's only special, like, back in the day, it was like, haram. It's like, oh, we need to watch this show, or like, we're the Khalid, it was that idiocy, Bosh, right? And it's like, people are staying up late to waste their time, to either be changing it up, or, like, I remember, it was, this was like, I don't know, 20 years ago, I was in DC, it was like, in Ramadan, I went to French to go pick up the food at a restaurant. I had no idea this was a hookah place. I was just like, sure, let's go grab to go. It was like in the middle of Ramadan, everyone is just like smoking it up, caterpillar style, okay? And it was like, all of a sudden, on the TV, they have like all their, singers, ugly ones up there, gyrating and moving around here, And then you have all of a sudden Muhammad Jibreel, Sheikh Muhammad Jibreel, like reading the names of Allah, and then you could tell how awkward it got in that shisha bar. Everyone was just like, it was so awkward because they know they're messing around, and the more they mess around, the more they're gonna find out, right? So don't stay up late for these frivolous reasons, brothers and sisters. Please do not do that. If you're going to stay up late, you should be doing adhkar, helping your mother, helping your parents, helping the masjid, helping the poor. You should not, like, I know outreach and Bari, they do like feedings, etc. a lot. Do those sort of things. I want you to maybe talk about the intention part, if possible.
Yeah, we'll conclude with that because a lot of the other stuff, maybe you'll ask questions about it. A lot of times people wonder, when do I need to make the intention? This is a valid difference of opinion. So some say that you can make one intention before, the night before Ramadan starts, the night before you fast. Your first fast, you can make an intention for the entire Ramadan, which I would say that that's probably the best way to go. Others are a little bit more strict. I think it might just be the Hanbalis. But the other opinion is that no, you have to make your intention every single night before Fajr time comes in. Basically at night, it could be before you go to sleep, it could be when you wake up for suhoor, you make your intention to fast, right? So as I mentioned, if you just want to do the one and done, you make your intention for the entire Ramadan. That's probably the most practical to go with. I think we can take Q&A here. There was one thing we did want to bring up, but I don't think it's necessary. Then we can go to Q&A or? Okay. Do you want? I want Sheikh to go over this. Yeah. That's a good reaction.
Okay, your tests, I don't care if you're like taking the bar or if you're going to be a neurosurgeon, I really don't care. That's not an excuse for you to not fast.
This question comes up a lot.
Wallahi, it's my future. If I don't, then I'm not going to be a doctor. Well, you're not going to have an doctor if you're not fasting.
I mean, y'all have probably heard about this before, right? People will ask, I have an exam, do I have to keep my fast? Like, yes. You have to keep your fast. You can only break your fast if you're sick or you're traveling or you're pregnant or you're breastfeeding or you're elderly or you're chronically ill, right? There's really no other excuse.
Yeah, I mean, the Prophet ﷺ and the companions in the Battle of Badr, fighting for their lives. Please do not equate your exam to the Prophet ﷺ's war expedition. Get real. That's not an excuse. Okay, no matter how difficult it is, that is not a legitimate excuse to not fast, etc. Right? So please, that requires you to get your schedule on track. If you know you got some imtihanat, some tests coming up in the Ramadan, etc., then it is your job to make sure that you schedule yourself and you allot enough time where you get enough rest and you review. Right? That's your responsibility. We do not sacrifice the religion for some sort of worldly inconvenience that we have. It should be the other way around. We should be scheduling our lives and our goals around. We should be scheduling around the pillars and the foundations of our deen.
Jazakumullah khair. So we'll go ahead and jump into Q&A. We have a bunch of questions in the live ask, so we'll take a few of the top questions, inshallah. If anyone in the crowd has questions as well, we can take those. We got a hot topic question at the very top. Does weed ruin your fast for 40 days? You want to elaborate on that rule?
Yes. What do you want me to say? Yes. Yes. That's it. Next question. There's really nothing to explain. Yes.
And if I could add on top of this question of this whatever ganja, weed, whatever you want to call it, okay? Hashish or Adriyash, okay? I had a brother come and say, but you know, being calm is from the Sunnah. Okay, go take a nap then. If you want to be calm, go take a nap. Don't lay down. Don't come and justify weed as if it's some sort of new topic that the ulama are not aware of. Absolutely false. The scholars of the past were aware of marijuana way in the past. They were very much aware of this, and they even wrote treatises on this topic of like hashish, etc., which is a derivative from the opium plant, right? So no, you should not be smoking weed, and you should definitely stop it. And if it means you can go to rehab so you can get yourself off it, that absolutely.
Is doing crypto futures haram?
What?
Is doing crypto futures haram? Just futures in general, if you want to elaborate.
Futures in general.
Like stock futures, you're basically betting on whether the stock will
like options?
go up.
Yeah, options trading.
That's hot.
Options, it depends on who you ask. I'm not an Islamic finance expert, but there's many around. You can ask Dr. Ryan, you can ask Sheikh Joe, you can ask who else is big into the space. But I've heard it's okay. With crypto in particular, you have to be careful. I heard especially with meme coins, you gotta be careful because it doesn't really have any real backing to it. Whereas if it's like Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever, Binance, you might be able to find some function with it. But yeah, I think what I had heard, it was pretty convincing that options is okay. But like I said, I'm not an expert, so la adri. Next question.
What is the Islamic duty for a mom versus a dad in terms of parenting? Does that have to do with
Sorry, asking.
In what aspect?
Just responsibilities to like child rearing. I think general child rearing. I mean, number one, it's not like the dad can breastfeed, so there's one big difference there. It's the dad's responsibility to provide for the mother. It's sadaqah. Shaykhs?
That topic is literally an open-ended Leviathan. Okay? It's just like release the packet, you know? How do you parent? Really, it's a really large open-ended question. It's really difficult to give it its full justice. But in the spirit of this topic of today, all right, okay, for the topic of Ramadan and the preparation for Ramadan, I cannot reiterate further. It is your job. Okay, let me just put this. If dad is so excited to see Matlube for dinner, and like, oh, Tarawih, what kind of message are you sending your kid? If you're more excited for, biryani, and like, is there like chapli kebab, but we just had palau the other day. If that is your enthusiasm during Ramadan, you got to realize what kind of parenting message that sends to your kid. Because what ends up happening is when they're not getting when they're not understanding the essence of Ramadan is to attain taqwa, they're only going to find meaning in food. And we, as a lot of us are immigrants, we already got plenty of food trauma. And we don't need to tie it into food deprivation and then like Ramadan and then like just eating all our feelings out. Because if you ask people about their favorite memories of Ramadan, a lot of people are going to say food. And that is not meant to be facetious, it is the truth. Our cultures put so much emphasis on food when Ramadan is the exact opposite. It's not about food. It's about ibadah. It's about devoting yourself to worship and to improving yourself. So when it comes to you as a parent, if they see you being serious, getting ready, being excited, go for the Tarawih, or even if you're not going for Tarawih, praying at home, etc., making a nice room, putting the sujadas down, the prayer rugs down, that kind of excitement, even if it's something as simple as, and I'm telling you, for parents, this is tough, because many parents are not ever willing to admit that they need to change, because it's like an honor thing. But imagine what kind of impact you as a parent can have, and you're like, whatever language you said, fena, whatever, habibi, whatever it is that you're going to say to your whatever, okay? If you were just simply to say to them even some words of, subhanAllah, over this past year, Baba's been, thinking about the things that he's done wrong, and, is really looking forward to making an improvement. And even if it's something like, my son the other day, I remember I yelled at you, I took out my anger at you, I'm really, really sorry. Let me tell you, and I'm thinking about how I'm prepare for Allah. You think that doesn't have an effect on the kid? No kid resents their parents the way how the kid sees their parents messing up and refusing to admit it. Because you can see it. But when they see that you're able to call yourself out and make the right changes, that actually has a huge impact on their iman formation, on their well-being, because they're going to say, wow, my parents are not above the law. My parents actually know how to say sorry. And if they know how to say sorry to you, imagine how much easier for you it is to teach your kids of how to ask Allah for repentance.
MashaAllah.
Shaykhs, when you were talking about eating important in Sunnah, I remembered something that I heard a few months ago. The first bid'ah that was invented at the time of Umar al-Khattab is people started eating till they got full. Is that true?
Is it true? I'm not sure about that. I mean,
We can look into it.
I'm not sure about the wording of is eating full an active bid'ah, because eating full is not an active ibadah in and of itself. It's not ibadah, it's not devotional worship in and of itself. So I don't know the context for this quote, so I don't need it.
Any more questions? What about from the crowd? What about the crowd?
Any?
Does anyone have any questions?
Okay.
Any Ramadan related questions?
Okay. No question. Okay, quick. Go eat your food. It's your last meal before Ramadan. Assalamu alaikum.
Let's go. Is this one clear? Can everyone hear me? People in the back? Raise your hand if you can't hear me. Okay, good. Okay. Mic clear?
Oh, okay. Alright, bismillah, alhamdulillah, sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Should I move it a little higher? Should I like?
You want to switch?
No, I'll just talk like this. Okay, how's this?
That's better.
Okay, I'll just talk a little bit. As a clarification, I only shift this is the imam of the whole. I'm not the imam for any masjid. So. I work in corporate, so maybe imam for that corporation. No, thank you. All right. When Ustad Ammar Shukri asked for, I'm sorry?
They can't hear you in the back.
So when Ustad, is that better?
Is that better for
Is
you?
that better? Okay. So when Ustad Ammar asked me to talk about Ramadan, the first thing I said is, no, to fiqh. I don't want to talk about fiqh of Ramadan because it's like a really extensive topic, and given the length of today's program, it would not actually do it justice. Although there will be a smattering, a light smattering of miscellaneous fiqh issues, which he's in charge of, inshallah. Okay, so I wanted to quickly just give an analogy of a marathon race. So whenever you look at a marathon race, whether Houston or Boston Marathon, yes. Switch it out. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So when you just quick check here, has anyone here ran a marathon, half marathon? Anyone here? Oh, subhanAllah, sisters more than the brothers. يعيشوا عليكم انتو. عليا كمان. MashaAllah, sisters are taking care of the body of the haque of the body. So if you look at a marathon race, right? The marathon, where are the majority of the spectators? I'm sorry? Like, yeah, I know they're on the side, but obviously not at the end. The beginning and at the end. The beginning and at the end of the race. And if you really think about this analogy, the people don't really, you'll have a few people off on the sides giving people cups of water, etc. Be like, yeah, keep it up, whatever, great. But the majority of the people are at the beginning and at the end. And if you look at the way how, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala improve all of us here, if you look at the way how many of us engage and approach the month of Ramadan, you cannot help but see the similarity in this analogy. Everyone shows up to the masjid, like at the beginning of the race, the beginning of the marathon, right? Everyone shows up, the masjid is packed, right? It's like packed, back to back, doors, everything, people spilling out, and we know how it goes. By the second week, by the third week, the masjid is what? Half empty. And then it becomes full again when? last 10 nights, but specifically
27.
27, right? Everyone shows back up for, back to the masjid. So I wanted to make this analogy just to kind of set the tone for everyone on the mindset, which I'm going to pass over to Shaykhs. The whole idea of the mindset, the physical versus the spiritual. So,
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. People in the back, can y'all hear me? Am I loud enough? A little bit now. Switch mics. Okay. This is better. It's awesome. The back, the one over there with water. Alright, so we'll just keep switching as we talk, inshallah. But this is better? Okay, alhamdulillah. I would also like to give a clarification real quick before Shaykh denies it. Today he's running point. He's Batman, I'm just Robin, so I'm just going to give my 2 cents, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept. But when it comes to mindset, me and Shaykh were actually talking about this as to how to approach this topic overall. And you see a lot of these lectures and series, and as Ramadan rolls around, you'll see this catchy title, The Inner Dimensions of Fasting, right? So much so that it caught on, and everybody started using inner dimensions. So inner dimensions of prayer, inner dimensions of dua, inner dimensions of zakah, right? And when we talk about inner dimensions, of course it talks about the spirituality of it all. And we both agreed that yes, fasting is highly spiritual. It's spiritually uplifting. You really feel something when the month of Ramadan comes around. And it's not like it's something that's far-fetched to talk about or to think about. Because for those of you that, mashallah, have been blessed to be able to go for Umrah or Hajj, when you touch down in Mecca or Medina, you feel blessings, right? You feel it surrounding you. For those of you that have been blessed to visit Al-Quds, same thing. You feel that this is a blessed land, especially during Ramadan. If you've gone to Mecca or Medina during Ramadan, especially in Medina, and I have a bit of a bias, I'm sure Shaykh does too, but it doesn't compare. Right? Nothing compares to Ramadan, particularly in Medina. And everybody's so focused on the inner dimensions that sometimes we forget about the outer dimensions. Right? What's the practicality of it all in terms of our day-to-day and even just physically, not only spiritually. And it's part of human nature, like the reason why people all of a sudden are so focused on inner dimensions of what we do as Muslims is probably a reaction to our entire lives. We just grow up hearing that we have to pray, we have to fast, we have to read Quran, we have to send Taraweeh, we have to do this, we have to do that, with no explanation at all, and no understanding of it at all. It's just, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said so we gotta do it. And this doesn't always work with everyone, especially if we don't live in a Muslim country, if we don't experience Ramadan the same way that others around the world experience it. Quick raise of hands if you've ever witnessed or experienced Ramadan in a Muslim country. Good amount. Now, you can either say agree, shake your head, say no, but does it even come close to the spirit that you feel here when celebrating Ramadan? No, right? It's a whole other experience. So we don't grow up with that here. So Shaykh and I kind of want to delve a little bit into that, right? What goes on with the preparation and building that feel of what Ramadan is really supposed to feel like. And we want to swing the pendulum back somewhere closer to the middle now, where it's not like, okay, you're just being told you just gotta fast, you just gotta do it, right? You just gotta fast from sun up to sundown, and you know, Allah will reward you, and you know, you'll be forgiven and all these things. So then we have to kind of, you know, drink the Kool-Aid of, okay, how is it supposed to make me feel spiritually? How is it supposed to bring me closer to Allah? How is it supposed to make me, you know, fall in line in what all the other people say about siyam or fasting? And so when we try to get back towards the middle, as I mentioned, human nature, you swing from one side to another. It's really hard to stay in the middle. Okay, the Islam is the middle path, but that doesn't mean it's always easy to stay on that middle path. Sirat al-Mustaqim is the middle path, but we're always being dragged to one side or the other, right? Too easy, too harsh, right? Too strict, too lenient, right? Too spiritual, too literal. Right? We want to find our way back to the middle. So we want to really pinpoint that the connection between the physical and the spiritual are hand in hand, right? With fasting in particular. We know the benefits of fasting, both on the body and the mind. We know the benefits of fasting in terms of reward. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions that fasting is for him. Right? The son of Adam, every good deed that he does, right, can be for himself, except fasting. Fasting is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the reason for this is what? Does anybody know? What's the whole reason Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say that fasting in particular is for him and him only?
With the other ibadah, people can see that fasting is the new level.
Exactly. Have y'all heard this before? Maybe you didn't hear him. The brother said that every single action that we do, forget ibadah, every single action in general, other people typically they'll see it, right? But when it comes to worship, people will see if you're praying, right? People can see if you walk up to the donation box and you drop something in there, right? When you're going for Hajj and Umrah, people can see it, right? And it's not just the people physically seeing you. A lot of us, we tend to, post it everywhere. Taking selfies with the Kaaba, and people. The funniest is when somebody takes a picture of themselves making dua and they're not even facing the Kaaba. Right? It's like they're facing the other way and they take a picture of me. Right? So sometimes we show people, and that's the main point. Riya, or showing off, can creep into every single action we do, except fasting. Right? If you're going to show off that you're fasting, you're actually going to look uber obnoxious. If you're walking around going like, oh, I'm so hungry, I've been fasting all day. If anything, and subhanAllah, I didn't even think about this until I was listening to Shaykh Abdullah Shaqiqi rahimahullah, hafidhullah sallallahu hafidhullah, may Allah grant him a long life. He's like the premier scholar of tafsir in Medina, right? Amazing. When he was talking about how if somebody's fasting, if they say they're fasting, they could be lying. And that's something that it never occurred to me. You can show off saying you're fasting, but really you could just be lying. And you just go home and you drink something, right? Whereas, subhanAllah, the Salaf, the people of the past, the pious people, they used to hide the fact that they were fasting. Right? They didn't even want people to know that they were fasting. They used to walk around with, like you have those little bottles of oil, right? They used to walk around with it because you could just dip some into a little bowl. If you get some bread, you just dip the bread and you eat it. That's how simple their meals were. But some of the pious people of the past, they used to walk around with a little bottle of oil so that people would see like, oh yeah, maybe he's gonna eat soon. Because they wanted to hide the fact that they were fasting. That's how closely they wanted to keep siyam between them and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I don't want to talk too long because I need Batman to get a shine. But
No, Batman stays in the dark.
where's the Commissioner Gordon? Someone shine the bat signal. Say radar, bat signal. But going back to the physical aspect of it, we want to go back to that because a lot of times now, because we've had too much inner dimensions and spirituality, we're kind of stuck in that dimension. We need to go back to the middle dimension. So I want to give it back to Shaykh AbdulRahman as we go more into what it means for us, physically, not just the fasting itself, but Ramadan as a whole.
All right, so the perfect intro, because this really leads into this point that I want to spend some time to clarify, and that is, you probably heard the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where he one time ascended the pulpit, and the Prophet ﷺ said Ameen 3 times, and then the companions later said, the Messenger of Allah, we saw that you had said Ameen 3 times. What happened? The Prophet ﷺ said, Jibreel came to me and he said these things, and he said Ameen. And one of the things that Jibreel said to him was, the person who reaches Ramadan and was not forgiven, and may that person be humiliated. When I was thinking about this hadith, it's not just, he wasn't forgiven. If you really think deeply about it, you come to realize that Ramadan is filled with opportunities for forgiveness. And okay, so let's explain that a little bit further. How is Ramadan filled with forgiveness? The default is that any person who is a Muslim is going to be fasting. That is the default. I'm not talking about the exceptions of the traveler, or the one who's sick, or the one who is unconscious or sleep, or maybe they're in a coma, or they're not of age. I'm talking about generally, the expectation is Muslims are fasting during Ramadan. And the Prophet ﷺ tells us, Man sama Ramadan, imanan wa ihtisaban, ghufira lahu ma taqaddama min dhanbihi. Whoever fasts Ramadan with iman. So it's not like, people might say, well, who's not doing it for iman? There are people out there who fast because it's culturally expected of them. They don't actually understand why they're fasting. They're just fasting because it's required of them. Or this idea of, you look at the verse in the Quran, and to tie this into the verse from the Quran, you find in the verse, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba alaykum as-siyam. O you who believe, the fasting has been prescribed upon you. Now, if you look at this phrase here, it's the fasting. It's not kutiba alaykum siyam. It's the fasting in and of itself, even though the translation of that, when you say the fasting, is a little awkward. But in Arabic, it is not just any type of fast. So then the question arises, did the people of Mecca actually know what was fasting during the time of the Prophet ﷺ? And the answer is yes, they did know what fasting was, because none of the companions were like, Ya Rasulullah, ma huwa as-siyam. They didn't ask, what is fasting? They knew the concept of fasting. It is not a foreign idea. So this idea of fasting, where did it come from? Is it something specific to Islam? No, because the verse continues and says, كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. Just like it was written for the people before you. Many people make the assumption that this verse here, just like it was written for the people before you, is referring to the Christians and the Jews. That's not true. I'm going to repeat that. The assumption, the presupposition, that the verse saying, it has been written upon you to fast, just like it was written for the people before you, this is not exclusively addressing the people of the book, namely the Christians and the Jews. In fact, the pagans and even mushrikeen, they used to fast. But was it for the sake of Allah? No. The ancient Egyptians used to fast, the ancient Greeks used to fast, and they used to fast for whatever reason that they had. For health reasons, before they purify themselves, they had to purify themselves before they go into the temple, whatnot. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making it very, very distinct that there were people in the past of all different religions where they all understood that the concept of abstaining from food is a reflection of self-control, of reaching a higher state. So think about this as what Shaykh Anis is saying here, and that is it's the physical aspect of fasting that will lead you to a higher realization of spiritual formation, as opposed to a spiritual formation and therefore I do this physical act. No, it is a physical act that through it you will gain a higher sense of your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Where does it say? لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. So that you may attain taqwa. So that's the first opportunity, and that is if you just fast Ramadan iman and ihtisaban with faith. Yeah, Allah made it fun. I believe that this is good for me, not bemoaning it, not saying, ugh, Ramadan, here we go. Outdated, etc. No, you firmly believe that this is something, a ni'mah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and ihtisaban, and seeking the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, not for any sort of recognition. When Shaykh Anis was talking about how people, it's difficult to know if someone is fasting. Some students, they used to, unfortunately, they used to be like, my breath stinks. It's like, okay. They're like, it's better than musk. I'm like, to Allah. To Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's better than musk, okay? So, the second opportunity is, the Prophet says, Man qama Ramadan imanan wa ihtisaban. Whoever stands up for the whole month of Ramadan. In other words, you're standing up for the salah. So that means you need to at least stand up. I don't care, even if it's just 2 rak'ahs, you have to do it every single day. Even if it's a short surah. As long as you meet that criteria, you get up and pray a little bit every single night. غُفِرَ لَهُ مَا تَقَدَّمَ مِنْ ذَنْبِهِ. And another opportunity, the Prophet ﷺ says, مَنْ قَامَ لَيْلَةَ الْقَدْرِ إِيمَانًا وَاحْتِسَابًا غُفِرَ لَهُ مَا تَقَدَّمَ مِنْ ذَنْبِهِ. Whoever stands up for Laylatul Qadr with iman and seeking a reward from Allah is to be forgiven. So the person naturally has plenty of opportunities. So if a person cannot capitalize on these opportunities, then indeed there is an element of humiliation. And before we move on to the next good point, I just want to remind everyone that this idea that Ramadan we get really tired, yes, I get it, we're all tired. But if you look at the people of the past, you look at some of the most interesting battles, they occurred during Ramadan. The Battle of Badr occurred in Ramadan. The conquest of Mecca occurred in Ramadan. The Battle of Buwaib, that occurred also in Ramadan. The conquest of Spain also occurred in Ramadan. One of the greatest battles in Islam, the Mamalik, when they stopped the expansion of the Mongols into further territory of the Muslims, it happened on the 26th of Ramadan. So this idea of, Wallahi ana ta'aba, like Ramadan, I'm so tired, I can't do anything, I can't be bothered. No. Great expansions have occurred during the time of Ramadan. Anything else that you want?
Does that need to be given?
No.
No? Wait until 7:45? Is everyone give it that?
Okay.
No? Okay. No, just a couple of other battles, just because people know these. The Battle of Qadisiyah also took place during Ramadan. That was the decisive battle between the companions mostly, but it was under the Khilafah of Umar radiallahu anh. Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas was the general for the battle, and it was the decisive battle between the Muslims and the Persians. And then another famous battle, the Battle of, how's it pronounced, Hittin, with Salahuddin Ayyubi, his army, against the Crusaders. That also took place during Ramadan. So you can see that, as Shaykh has been mentioning, it's really the physical aspect of it that leads to the spirituality. Even when he was breaking down the ayah, it ends in saying لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. It doesn't say that if you have taqwa, or when you feel taqwa, you'll start fasting. It says fasting has been mandated, obligated, prescribed, just like it was prescribed to the people who came before, so that you can obtain taqwa. And usually when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says لَعَلَّكُمْ, He's not trying to say that, maybe it'll happen. It's not that type of hope. Right? If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, that means that if you do what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is commanding you to do, if you do it properly, if you do it with sincerity, and if you do it with according to what the Prophet ﷺ taught us, then the results will be that you'll be granted that thing. Whether Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says لَعَلَّكُمْ تَهْتَدُونَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. You find it all throughout the Quran. When we say it, it means that I hope it works out for you. But we don't know if it's going to happen or not. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says it, if we do it, that's the result. That's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says لَعَلَّكُمْ. You want to move on to the next point?
Alright, the next point is quickly talking. I want to make this point here because the next point I want to really, before Salah, is the idea of planning and prepping. And this question comes up about the issue of decorating the house, right? And I'm going to put it, in advance. There's nothing wrong with for someone to put some things up, Ramadan, the Ramadan spirit, the energy to get the family excited. That's fine, inshallah. However, I want to draw attention to this idea that the sweetness and the fulfillment that you get from Ramadan is by fasting. And the greatest preparation in the coming few days that you should all embark on is really about a mental reset. Much greater than putting up lanterns, fawanis, and lights. And parents will always say, oh, it's to get the kids excited. And I want to make a really interesting distinction here. You look at the difference between when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells parents to tell their kids to pray. He says start them off at 7. He doesn't say start kids off with fasting at 7. There could be some wisdom here, and that is fasting requires a great deal of physical discipline and preparation. And you're not going to understand what it means to get in the mindset of Ramadan. In other words, when you are looking forward to Ramadan, you're seeking out the forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're looking for that reboot. You're looking for that reset button. That has you as a parent, you as an elder sibling, etc., as a friend, etc., that idea cannot be imparted through the putting of some lights. Lights are great. If that is what brings you more excited, that's fine. But it is recognizing the opportunity for a reboot, inshallah.
Sparks joy.
Sparks joy. I mean, not very common, but still. So I think we should Chao will continue with that.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد
Sorry.
وأشهد
أو أشهد
أن
أن
محمدا
محمدا
عبده
عبده
ورسوله.
ورسوله.
I bear witness
I bear witness
that there's no God
that there is no God
worthy of worship
worthy of worship
except Allah,
except Allah,
and I bear witness
and I bear witness
that Muhammad,
that Muhammad,
peace and blessings be upon him,
peace and blessings be upon him,
is his servant
is his servant
and messenger.
and messenger.
Takbir!
Allahu Akbar.
Takbir!
Allahu Akbar.
Takbir!
Allahu Akbar.